Thank you, Sange. Sange is our praise singer. She is a student in the College of Music about to graduate. The graduations have had the benefit of her praise singing for some years now, and I feel really privileged and honored to have you sing the praise song for me. Thank you, Sange. Firstly, the turnout tonight and that you're all here. Thank you, Minister. It's especially I'm especially honored that you were the minister and came to the installation, made a speech there, and that you are here again this evening, 10 years later. You've changed jobs more often than I have in this period, but you've supported higher education while you were Minister of Science and Technology fantastically, and we have great hope. We were delighted with your appointment, and it's good for UCT, it's good for the country. It's good for higher education. Thank you to the organizers, I want to pay special thanks to the team that has put this together. This is no small task. Gerda and your team, CMD, and it's been a huge task, made a lot more difficult because this hasn't been the only farewell. There's been one for students, for staff, and for alumni, and there've been graduations in between. And I know how this has stretched the department, but how many people have just gone the extra mile to make this happen. I want to thank the speakers for the wonderful things said, and that brings me to, I suppose, the start of what I want to say, which is that it's almost embarrassing to hear the speakers speak about the highlights and the achievements of the last 10 years, because these things have happened on my watch, but they're clearly not a solo effort. They are the result of teams of people throughout the organization who have worked to make this institution great and to bring it to the point we have. Leadership at many levels, inspired leadership in our governing bodies, and many members of council are here tonight, and of previous councils. And I've been honored to work with 3 councils. I've learned a huge amount from them, as has the whole executive. I said to the council this evening, we had our usual 10 or 11 hour meeting today, and said that the external members of council bring with them expertise. They're volunteers. We don't pay our council members. They bring expertise from all walks of life, from business, from corporate and public sectors. And we, the members of the university executive who are on the council, are privileged to learn from you and to be guided by you and to be accountable to you and through you to the government, to the public, to the society. The institution is a complex machine, and the leadership happens at all levels, but the role that people play, each person plays a critical role, and the success we've had has been because the jammy shuttle drivers drive the buses and get students to exams on time, even when it's raining, even when they've got to get up at 4 a.m. to get to work. The cogs in the wheel, the student administration, the financial aid, the housing, the procurement department, each part of the university, the administration of the university, which is so often hidden and doesn't get the reflected glory of the research outputs, of the graduation rates, of the graduation ceremonies and the success of their students, but they are such critical elements to the smooth functioning of the university. And I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to them, to you, those of you who are here and representing, because that's what makes the university great too. The tribute from Professor Peterson on behalf of my colleague Vice-Chancellors, I want to say thanks to you, those Vice-Chancellors who've come from other parts of the country just for this evening. It means a huge amount. I've, of course, learned from you, and I know that while the Vice-Chancellors and USAF may have said nice things today about my role there, they also, at least amongst ourselves, are often very frustrated with UCT and with our role in the higher education sector, which can sometimes seem to dominate the sector at others' expense sometimes leads to decisions we take or decisions taken at some universities have a domino effect on other universities, and that knock-on effect is tough. So the support that they've given me has been in spite of the fact that we've often differed on strategies, but it's been a forum which has forged a remarkable camaraderie, and it's actually fantastic. The best thing about USAF and getting together with the Vice-Chancellors is not so much that we can come up with great ideas or solve the problems of the country, but that we have collective shoulders to cry on and to reflect with, and it's a sort of space, a safe space for us to talk about our challenges and also our successes and to learn from each other. And so I'm really grateful that you are represented here and that some of you have made the special effort to come down. The alumni have been a really important part of my life and role as Vice-Chancellor. And I probably spend 10 to 15% of the year traveling, visiting alumni around the world and in South Africa and across the continent. And we've done well, as you heard, both building up the alumni support base, and it's been a particularly tough struggle because during the last few years, alumni have questioned. They get the sensational news clips and video clips of what's happening at UCT, so they see the burning portraits and they see the trauma of a violent protest. And they don't really understand what's happening and are quick to say, this isn't the UCT we knew, and this is things are going down, things are going to the dogs. And so we've, through the Alumni Development and Alumni Department, through DAD, also represented here tonight, that team, and their representatives around the world, and the trusts that we have in London and New York and Canada, we have been able to secure that alumni support. And we've built it up, and as you heard, built up the Quest program, and actually continue to raise more money most years than we've raised in the year before. And you've heard the figure of 3 billion. It's actually more than that. But it works out to R1 million every day that's been raised for 10 years, and that's a phenomenal achievement. But I mention that again, not to solicit praise, but because the misrepresentation of the speakers is somehow that's attributable to me. And those of you who are academics in the university in particular know that money is money that you write project proposals for, you nurture the relationships with foundations and with donors. It's your excellence that shines through and that persuades donors, often skeptical donors, that if they've got a limited amount of money to give and they're going to choose where to give it, they want to give it to a winning team, to a team that they have confidence will manage the funds well, will deliver the projects on time, whether they're building projects or research projects. And so that is I want to ask you to give yourselves a round of applause, because that fundraising is your success. And then, of course, there are the students. The students are the lifeblood of any university, and the caliber of our students has been exceptional. It remains exceptional. We are very lucky to have the pick of the crop of school leavers, and at the postgraduate level, to attract students from all over the world. 30% of our doctoral students are from outside South Africa. And that's a signal of the esteem with which our supervisors and our research laboratories are held. So people want to come and study and work here and be supervised here. It's also the case that many of those students most of them, in fact, come from other African countries. And this is positioning UCT as the hub for the continent, the intellectual hub. Those doctoral graduates go back to their universities, they become academics, they maintain the links that they have formed here with their supervisors and with other colleagues. They build joint research projects on that. And that's how UCT has become so well positioned in the continent and so successful and as an Afropolitan university. And again, that is due to the academics we have, their ability to attract those students and supervise them well, and through word of mouth grow that network and that appeal. But the students are critical to our success, and we are ranked as well as we are in good measure because the reputation of our graduates is so high. And I suspect it would be as high wherever they went. So we give ourselves credit for teaching them so well, but we must recognize that we have a really outstanding group of students. And I want to thank Ramabina for his speech because he's represented the 10 or 11, well, this year there have been about 3 SRC presidents, so it's probably more, but he's represented some 10 to 13 SRC presidents. And the student leadership has also been exceptional. We are committed to a governance process that draws students into almost every committee we have, and many people say to a fault. Certainly, I think the students sometimes feel that we kill them through bureaucratizing their lives in the ways that we ask them to participate. But we've had the benefit of mature, courageous student leaders who have been willing to take a chance, to sometimes break the expectation. For many years, the reason prior to late 2015, we were able to put our fees up to fund the free education for students in the missing middle. And that cross-funding was because of the success or the foresight or the insight that our student leaders had and demonstrated. When I've been walking around this evening in the section outside, many people came up to me and said, you must be counting the days, you must be so pleased to get out, you deserve a rest. Some have said, if you knew then what you know now about what this job would be, would you have taken the job? And I want to respond to that because I have no doubt that I would take the job again. It's been a real privilege to be given this opportunity to lead this great university. And we should remind ourselves that a decade is 10 years, and we tend to be, I think, heavily influenced by the recent times, by the last 3 years. But in fact, there were the famous biblical 7 good years to start. And you've heard a lot of the things reflected here about what we've done throughout the 10 years, but the 7 good years, I think for many of us, and certainly for me, was a complete high. It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful camaraderie. People just felt and could see we were making exceptional progress. And perhaps that resulted in us taking our eye off the ball in certain respects, off the ball of particularly the institutional culture, the issue that was symbolized most profoundly by Rhodes Must Fall and the Rhodes statue. And that sort of unleashed the wake-up call of the last 3 years. And I've been asked if I had had the opportunity to retire or to step down after 7 years, would I have done that? And again, my answer is no. Because I think that this period of 2015 to 2017 will prove to have been a watershed period, not just for UCT, but for higher education. We must remember that this was a national protest movement, and the higher education landscape has changed forever as a result of it. And by and large, the causes that the students were fighting for were causes which we Vice-Chancellors and the executives of the universities were closely aligned to. We had been complaining about funding for higher education for years before the Fees Must Fall movement really triggered. And we had to raise our fees to compensate for the declining subsidy. And so we were on the side of the students when it came to calling for better funding and more systematic funding for poor students in particular. I certainly don't agree with the methods. I don't think it's ever acceptable to shut down a university or to prevent other people from writing exams. But the causes could not be faulted. And similarly, the Rhodes Must Fall issues and the issues of decolonization, the issues of shifting the institutional culture and accelerating transformation. And I feel that I've had the privilege then to be an actor in this making of history. If I had not had that opportunity, I would have been a spectator on the side or a participant in some way, but very much on the sides. And not many people have that opportunity to be an actor in a significant movement of change. You read about and talk to people who were either part of the student movement or part of the leadership of universities in 1968, when across the world there was a sea change in university life and university governance. And again, for ourselves, many of us were student activists in the mid-1970s, and we look back on those years, and they were tough, and we did our time in some pretty horrible places, but I wouldn't have changed that for anything, because they were formative in our lives. And for me, this last 3 years, has been formative in shaping my understanding of leadership and my insights, and I hope I will have opportunities to give some of that back to others that follow, and to people in other sectors, because it has been a remarkable experience. I want to thank, reflecting on the last 3 years is another reason to pay tribute to the staff of the university, because there have been years in which both individuals and the institution experienced trauma and stress and took strain and required resilience, and people have talked about my resilience, but really it required resilience on the part of everyone. And the fact that the ship has been, I think, brought into harbour through the storm and is in good shape and in excellent shape to make the next journey, is again thanks to the persistence, people who were willing to commit to a much longer academic year because exams were postponed, or to start early the next year because of deferred exams. And this is not just the academics, it's the staff, it's the processing of residence life, it's the management of bursaries and financial aid, it's everyone in the university. Student wellness, which took tremendous strain in helping support students and staff who themselves were taking strain. The whole team pulled together to get us to where we are, and I again want to pay tribute to all of you. This is not something that I did alone or could have done. It's been done with the support of all of you. And no doubt made mistakes, and that perhaps takes me to the next point, which is many of you have asked me what am I going to do next? I, as you heard from the Chair of Council, Deborah, my wife, has secured a visiting professorship at University College London, and I'll be going along to do the cooking and the shopping, and I'm going to watch series, which I'm wanting to catch up. I want to play the saxophone, and the big band, Mike Campbell, mentioned that he wasn't going to ask me to play tonight, and the reason is that there is a very serious misdemeanor in the university code of conduct, and I did not want to be dismissed in my last week for bringing the university into disrepute. The Cape Times would have had a field day with that. They still think I'm going to be dismissed before the end of June, but I'm determined not to be. But I hope to come back a better saxophone player, and if I can persuade Nan Yield, who's here, who plays the sax, to let me play with her, we'll come and play for UCT sometime. But I'm also hoping my project for the year will be, an additional project I hope will be to write a book, and to write about this period, this watershed period in higher education and at UCT, and to reflect on the decisions made, good and bad, to think about whether there were things we might have done differently with the wisdom of hindsight, to think about the funding of higher education, which I think is not solved. We've got a plaster put over the wound, but we've still got to address that, and in the long term. So there's a lot of interesting things that I want to think about and read about and write about, and that will be my project. But we'll be coming back to Cape Town after the year, and I have no job after that. I am dismissed by the university after the end of this week, or after the sabbatical. So I'm in the market if any of you have anything interesting to offer. As I want to pay, before leaving the podium, I want to say one particular thank you to Deborah Posel, my wife, who has, as you heard, stood by me and been in the trenches, a fantastic support, has maintained her own academic career, and that's a really tough thing to do when you're married to the Vice-Chancellor, to be an independent academic, because people see you more often than not as the Vice-Chancellor's wife, and that puts you into a slot instead of leaving you completely independent. But especially I've been fortunate and privileged to have by my side someone who understands universities and understands academic life, and who is a deep thinker and has helped shape my reactions, my thoughts, the things I've written to you, the VC desks, the op-ed pieces. Almost all of them have been shaped and sometimes edited by Deborah, and she takes responsibility. She takes responsibility for the good in them. I must take responsibility for the mistakes. But I want to thank her again publicly and say this is not a job I could have done without her. Thank you, Deborah. When I said this at my installation, I want to say it again now that I love you more than ever, and thank you for standing by me in this time when it has been a difficult time. There have been very difficult times and there have been highs, but it's really not something I could have done without you. Thank you again. As I take my leave of the university, I'm content in the knowledge that in passing the baton to Kgetsi Phakeng, her experience here over the last 2 years will ensure a seamless transition, though no doubt she will bring significant changes in vision and in leadership style, as she should. That is the reason why we appoint Vice-Chancellors for limited terms and don't allow them to change the Constitution and go on forever in their positions. We have in Professor Phakeng a strong academic, committed to research excellence, someone who is acutely tuned in to the nuances of the institutional culture that cause alienation and can alienate, and she can articulate them so eloquently that what it is about the institutional culture that is alienating. And I think that particular skill is the first step to creating the more inclusive climate and environment that we want to create. And I have no doubt that under her leadership, this is going to become a much more inclusive environment. She is clear what she wants to achieve, decisive, a wonderful public face for the institution, and all this bodes well for UCT to implement its strategic goals. It's really comforting in handing over your sort of baby, this institution that I feel so bound up in and so invested in, to be able to hand it over to someone who one really has a sense gets what needs to be done, and is going to have the strength, competence, excellence to do that. And so I'm inviting you, ladies and gentlemen, to charge your glasses so that we can drink a toast to the next Vice-Chancellor, Professor Kgetsi Phakeng. To Professor Phakeng. To Professor Phakeng, cheers. And that's all for me. Thank you very much to all of you.